And thank you for joining me, everyone. Charles Moskowitz. I do the program Monday through Friday live, 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I know that this is not the usual weekday program, but I feel like I want to get up and do a little commentary either way. That's the wonders of the internet. You can do this anytime I want, as long as they let me do it, which of course is a big question. And I want to discuss a topic that is censored by YouTube, but I want to do it in a way that I'm hoping will not be censored because I'm going to stick to not making any specific claims here, but doing it in a general way. And that is the topic of the audit that is now going on in Arizona of the last election and other audits that apparently are coming down the pike. I'm not here to make any claim with regard to what the outcome of that audit might be, although we may be finding out as soon as the end of next week. I simply want to note that my research and my sources, which are easy to access, they include the Gateway Pundit and they include Steve Bannon's excellent pandemic war room program and other sources, plus some reporting I've heard directly and interviewed people directly from the site, including Josh Bernstein, who was in Arizona and observing the audit, is that this audit is one of the best that's ever been done. It is completely comprehensive. It is completely done out in the open. There are video cameras capturing every moment of it. They are set up in a way that you can just see it in the auditorium, that it is above board and it is accessible. And by the way, I contrast that with events that occurred on the evening of the election, which were not out in the open. I don't think I'm saying anything here that'll get me banned, other than to note that it was widely reported in the mainstream media that people were denied access to the counting of votes after on election eve and in the subsequent days in the battleground state. That's not happening here. Everyone has access to this audit. And the audit has been visited by elected state legislators in, I think it's now upwards of 12 states. And all of them have gone on record as saying that they met with the auditors, they went to the auditorium, they observed the audit, and that it was excellent. It seems to me that this is a model for audits that, under the circumstances, ought to take place routinely, possibly in all 50 states, and possibly for every election. Because the bottom line is that the American people, according to all polls that I've seen, are distrustful of the last election. I don't want to get into details here again because I don't want to be banned. This is live on YouTube. And given that fact, I would think that, at least conventionally, the whole country would get behind these audits so that we could put this question to rest, because we have to have faith in our electoral process. And we don't right now. Almost 50% of Republicans believe that the election was mismanaged. Let's just put it that way. Probably about 30% of Democrats believe this. Growing numbers of independents believe it. And those numbers across the board are growing. And so for that reason, I would think that the Democratic Party, the Democratic establishment, the governors, the elected officials, and the media, who favor them clearly, would get behind these audits, that the whole country would get behind it. So again, we could put this issue to rest. But instead, they're attacking it. I read the New York Times every day. This is conspiracy theories, and this is outright bogus, and it's, debunked things that are uttered by the former president. I'm afraid to even mention his name because I could get banned on YouTube. And, just this kind of mocking, smug, dismissive attitude toward, again, something like 50% of the American people. And what's worse is that they're hiring lawyers and law firms that are swarming in to Arizona and elsewhere to stop these audits. And they talk about these suspicions as if they've been debunked. By whom? As if this is false. Really? Then let the audit go forward. Let's find out if it's false. And that's not honest. It's a dishonest reporting. I think that most Americans, whether you believe there was a problem with the last election or not, they would like to get to the truth, because if we don't, then we're never going to have another free election. We're never going to have trust in our system. There are suspicions about the last election. Am I going to get banned from YouTube for saying that? I mean, the New York Times today says it. There are particular concerns over the electronic aspect of the election. These are concerns that were raised by Senator Elizabeth Warren, my senator here in Massachusetts, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, and others, who said several years ago, I don't hear much from them now, admittedly, especially Liz Warren, but they testified before Congress as sitting members of Congress, as senators, that they had concerns about electronic voting, that Lester Holt from NBC News did a segment, which is now making the rounds, in January of 2020, a couple of months before the pandemic, saying that there were major problems with electronic voting machines, and that they had statisticians come on that segment claiming that thousands of these machines had modems, which meant that they could go online, and that as such, they could be tampered with, both during and even after an election. There is an attorney in Michigan, Matt Toperno, hired by some private citizens to challenge the vote in a particular county in Michigan. I'm not going to mention the name of it because I could get banned. And this county, according to reports that were published by all the major papers, had a situation where 6,000 votes were switched from the Republican to the Democrat because of what they called a glitch in the system. Now, maybe it was a glitch, maybe it was deliberate. It doesn't matter. The fact is that this is what happened. And that same glitch could happen elsewhere, and it reportedly has. And the glitch always seems to favor the Democrats. Well, this attorney, Toperno, has issued a report indicating that this so-called glitch happened regarding machines that were online. And again, this is something Lester Holt from NBC News has talked about. I'll simply end this part because I don't want to say more by noting that the Carter Library, set up by former President Jimmy Carter in Atlanta, did a Blue Ribbon Commission study of online voting in the 90s. It was headed by a Democrat and a Republican, the Democrat being Jimmy Carter himself, former president, and the Republican being former Secretary of State James Baker. And that they studied the issue, and after 2 years, they issued a report not recommending that this process go forward, that they saw major flaws in that system, and that it was something that could be very well manipulated in a manner that would not be honest and could even be manipulated by outside and even foreign powers. And that these are accusations that are now being made with regard to this election. Now, people in the mainstream media, the Democrats will say, oh, this is just conspiracy theories, and they hurl insults, and you're part of QAnon and all this stuff. Well, fine. Then let's have the research go forward so we can find out. That way you'll be fine, right? If there wasn't a problem, then we can really know that. And by the way, if there is a problem, it's not going to change the outcome of the election, I don't believe. That's already happened. That's water under the bridge. But it could change things going forward. Now, there are so many other suspicions out there on so many different levels, federal, state, and local. And there are so many accusations being made against politicians who, particularly secretaries of states in the states, who are accused of manipulating election law in a way that would favor one candidate over the other, and that would contradict the constitutional process, which was that the state legislatures make election laws. And there are so many accusations of money pouring in from people like well, I don't want to even mention his name, but it's one of the biggest social network sites in the world. This particular head of that social network site and his wife contributed something like $400 million out of their own pocket to local election organizations. We don't know where that money went. We don't know how that money might have affected the outcome of the election, but it raises questions about money poured into an election. I mean, isn't this something the liberals used to care about, right? Campaign financing or election financing, through a back door. These are things, there are so many questions that have been raised that in order to restore a sense of integrity going forward, we have to do these kinds of audits, and we need to get some more honest and objective reporting. We need to have some investigative journalists do their job and go out and research these things. Right after the election, there were almost 1,000 affidavits filed in several states claiming that by people who claimed that they had witnessed improprieties. Where are our investigative journalists reading these affidavits, interviewing these people, following up on this? They haven't happened. The media has done nothing except throw mud and accusations. This is something that, in our free society, we're supposed to be able to investigate political and criminal conspiracy. You don't call names something, oh, that's a conspiracy. Yeah, you investigate it. You find out whether or not it has merit. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But the lack of investigation on this issue, and that the same people that should be doing these investigations, that they're throwing ugly accusations without research. This is like what communist countries do. We can't have that in this country. If we're going to move forward as a free people, we have to get to the truth. And I hope and pray that we do. I don't know if we're going to make it, because it seems to me that the opposition to that is the same people that very well may have affected the problem in the first place. Let's put it that way. I'm sorry if I'm speaking so vaguely, but I don't want to lose my station. And I'm simply going to conclude by noting that there is a lot of talk in this country amongst our elites, our ruling class, our establishment, about voter integrity, that they're championing the cause of stopping voter suppression. There's a bill before Congress. It's the first bill presented by the Biden administration that would drastically change the way we elect, our elections under the rubric of voter integrity. It would nationalize elections. We should note that elections in this country are state run, including the presidential election. It technically is 50 state elections all done on the same day. This bill would nationalize that process. It would end, things like the state's right to expect to regulate voter identification and absentee ballots and other things. It would put in place systems that previously had been decided by the states and by the state legislatures, which is the more democratic approach. And when states are trying to put in place, laws that protect the vote, the one man, one woman, one vote principle, they're being attacked and mocked and boycotted and ridiculed. And you have this phony accusation launched that somehow when a state puts in place laws that protect the identity of the voter, that this means you got something against Black people, which is a lie. Nothing to do with that. In fact, these laws are protecting Black people who have gone through the Civil Rights Movement and the Voter Rights Act of 1965 in order to have the vote and have their vote enfranchised. Nothing can suppress a vote more than a false vote. You have to protect the vote. You have to know that the vote that's cast was cast by a person who is a registered voter, not by, ballots mailed out indiscriminately. And then, it turns out that it came from like a parking lot. And there's a case right now in California where 3,000 ballots came out of the University of California, Santa Barbara. But in fact, and the dorms, in fact, that college was in lockdown because of the pandemic. So there were no voters in that college on election day. Things like this erode the confidence of people in the vote. And when states enact laws that ensure that the vote is protected, they're not engaging in voter suppression. They're preventing voter suppression. Voter suppression happens when a fake vote is cast. Every time a fake vote is cast, your vote is suppressed because it's canceled out by some other mechanism that is not real and that is put in place to affect an election. So putting in place these laws to protect the citizen is the opposite of voter suppression. And it protects the vote, including minorities and everyone as a voter. And furthermore, this whole agenda put forth by the Brennan Institute, which is connected to New York University, and which I would describe as a turf group that received financing from a very shady character. I'm not going to mention his name. They're the ones that patented this piece of propaganda that says that voter laws that protect the identification of the voter mean you have something against Black people. It's a racist idea. It basically says that Black people can't identify themselves or register to vote just like white people, which is a lie. I mean, look, I know this is anecdotal, but I attend a college where I'm mostly where most of the students are minorities. I'm one of the few people that in the classroom that identifies as white. And I also, one of the side things that I do is I drive Uber in Boston, or at least I did before the pandemic. And a very large share of my passengers are people of color. And I talk to people. And I can assure the people over at the Brennan Institute and these other propaganda outfits that they are just as able to identify themselves as everyone else, and do. They carry the same ID I carry. They function the same way I function. And that this racist idea that Black people are somehow not able to do this, or that they're like children, is a racist lie. Anyway, so I hope I've not gotten myself in too much trouble here, but I will say that this movement to confirm and protect and defend the vote of every man and woman in this country who is a registered voter is a progressive movement. It is an organic movement, and it is a movement that's moving forward. And that those who oppose it have questionable motives. I'll leave it at that. Anyways, I'm not going to say more because I don't want to get in trouble. This is Charles Moskowitz, and I want to thank you for listening, everyone. God bless you all.